Yo, check it out. Want to know if the price of those wave runners is too good to be true? Or if I Wear My Kicks 49 is truly selling dead stocks? Or if that Jordan 1 Royal Box is original? eBay checks. See that little blue check mark? Behind it is a team of independent authenticators who check. And we mean everything. Every tongue, check. Every toe box, check. Every corner of every box, check, 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 check. Every logo, every label, every lace loop. Yeah, it's checked. The luster of the leather, the topography on the tags, to the straightness of the stitching on the sole. Everything you can see, and even some things you can't.
Really?
Then they tag them, log them in the system, box them up, and ship them out, with no cost for the buyer or seller. eBay checks, so the moment you open that box is as real gets.
Oh boy, we are finally past that long and strenuous offseason as we are ready to kick things off here for the Valorant, or the Knights Arena, Valorant Challengers North America Split 1, Week 1, Day 1, Match 1. I wrote it all down because it was such a mouthful. There's so many things for us to talk about, but you're not going to be dealing with me alone. I think it's about time we bring in the casters for the day. We've got Dan Dryad and Tanner Metro to break down all the action. And honestly, it was a long offseason for some of these teams. Some of the teams we're going to be seeing today, even Tanner, were teams that played in VCT last year, played in the LCQ, and that was where their season ended. And we haven't seen anything from them since August. There's so many question marks in the air.
There's a lot of question marks, and I mean, I think for us on the desk, obviously fans want to know what their favorite teams look like. We've got teams announcing today what their finalized rosters are. It's a mess. I feel like it's so esports to be last minute for the most part. But guys, come on. We as fans, as casters, we need to know. And today we finally get to figure out what these teams look like. Because like you said, Bach, it's been so long since we've seen a lot of these guys compete.
And that's the crazy thing, right, Dan Dryad? Because these are teams that were invited, so we don't know what to expect. We did see some teams make it through from the qualifiers, but obviously, elephant in the room, we're talking about FaZe, who announces their roster today.
I wonder, yeah.
So
I was wondering who we were talking about there. There's one team that I had in mind, and it's definitely FaZe. But overall, yeah, what you were saying, right? We got to see a little bit of other teams going through the open qualifier to the last chance qualifier to make it all the way here. And now what we really want to see is how those teams that just made it into challengers are going to compete against the teams that we know so well from last year.
The craziest thing, too, is that we were watching that video before the stream goes live, and we see some of the teams, we see the power rankings as we got a list of all the teams that are actually competing in Challengers, and FaZe is somehow not at the bottom. No disrespect to FaZe. We didn't know who the roster even was. So it's like we're just kind of ranking this team based on assumption that they're going to be okay. And obviously we see the roster come out, Tanner, and it's not that far off from the team they played with in VCT and the LCQ. So I think that those assumptions and expectations are fair, but still, this could have gone a completely different direction. We could have been seeing a roster of players we've never even heard of.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, right, you're saying it's probably pretty fair. I think everybody had a general idea of what was happening. We all know that in the mix, we heard some names being tossed out as to what was going to be signed. And I think the player that they picked up is a good pickup for the team. I think it does bolster the squad. But if we're talking about FaZe specifically, the last time we saw them was Chamber Meta. So really anything can happen.
But he was still looking at the offseason as well. There was a lot of movement going on behind the scenes. We saw teams pretty much fall apart as they did not make their VCT run into champions. And then those teams also did not make it into the partnerships program for Valorant. And now those teams have been reborn. You look at a team like M80 as an example. You've got G2, who's a mix of players coming in from different orgs. Obviously, that's Shazam and Dapper, and a little bit of version 1 in there as well. And then you've still got teams who stuck around. I got to give credit to Shopify Rebellion Dryad for supporting the team throughout the offseason, knowing they were coming into that. It's something we actually talked to the players about. Last season during VCT, they said Shopify really supports us. And you can see that it's pretty much the same team they played with last stage in VCT.
It is actually super sweet because if you remember at that time, it was a team that wanted to stay together after they lost their org, and Shopify was there to support them, every single one of them, and it still continues to this day. But we do really want to see how those teams that stay together have been improving, right? Because it's just a mix of what teams are going to be making drastic changes that we don't know how the matchup is going to be, but also those teams are staying together, like Shopify, a lot like FaZe keeping the same core, and even the Guard, right, where teams, and we've seen a little bit of insights from them, they're looking better and better, but when it comes to that matchup, when it comes to that official confrontation, it's a different story.
Let's talk about the groups as well, because it's important to see how these teams are going to be matching up against each other. We saw the power rankings before in that video, and we got an appreciation for maybe how well these teams will do. But obviously, the groups are going to dictate how teams make it out. Again, it's the top 4 that move on. So you can take a look at the groups now. You've got FaZe, Shopify, G2, Breakthrough, Oxygen Esports, and the now rebranded Turtle Troop. And then on the other side, you've got TSM, the Guard, M80, Disguised Mad Lions, and OR Esports. Tanner, I got to be honest, right now, just looking at this, it's no surprise that in that pre-show video, the Guard was a heavy favorite given what they were able to do last year. And I think even just seeing the teams and how they stack up, the groups, the way they shape up, the Guard is definitely the heavy hitter currently in Challengers.
Yeah, and so that's going to be one of the teams that we look at a little bit later in the day. I think it's so fitting that the Guard are up there. We just saw them in the Ludwig Tarek Invitational. And even if you kind of like erase all of that stuff and you're like, okay, they did well in a tournament that happened at the beginning of the year with split back in the map pool. I think the biggest takeaway, or one of the largest takeaways from that, is Trent is back to form. So I'm very excited to see now that, again, the pressure is on. We've got 5 weeks with these guys. If Trent can continue to be the Trent of old. But when you look at both of these groups, I really feel like you can look at 4 strong teams, and then you have 2 question marks. And the way that it kind of shakes out is my top 4 and my bottom 2, right? I think Oxygen is a big question mark for me. Turtle Troop also a big question mark as to, and they're the open qualifier teams. They're, well, some of the open qualifier teams. And then Mad Lions and OR Esports. Also question marks to me, whereas I have high hopes for Disguise. I have high hopes for, M80, the Guard, TSM. So this is really a lot of fun. We've seen this format before last year for Challengers, and I'm glad we get it now. So that the players who have kind of always been in maybe like a tier 2 limbo have a real chance at some type of stability, some type of structure, some week-to-week action. They can have all the prep time that they need, and they're getting the org support behind them. So I really, really enjoy these groups, and I'm really excited to see how the season kind of leading into the playoffs shakes out.
And I feel like the question that we always have when we see this kind of groups is which group looks the most difficult, right? And to me, that's got to be the group B when you have the Guard and you have M80, right? It's the 2 teams that people are putting all the way up in their power rankings. They have so much potential, and especially because we know these players from before, right? But then it's a good matchup for that group A as well, where we see a good amount of those new teams that are coming through. with also very known players and a good opportunity to get all the way to the top when there's a FaZe clan and there's a G2 that maybe need to prove those results right from the beginning.
Let's be fair, though. Let's not forget. Last year, we had two teams that really came out of nowhere that surprised us, and that was EG and that was Ghost. Two teams who kind of came out of nowhere to prove that they were potentially the strongest teams. I remember coming into the playoffs and thinking, there is no reason why these teams should lose. And then they both lost. Then I remember coming into the LCQ and thinking, there's no reason why these teams should lose. And then they both lost. But ultimately, their run was incredibly impressive, and there's still room for innovation from teams that we've never heard of, players that we've never heard of as well. But you did mention that we're going to be seeing the guard later today, so we can go ahead and take a look at the schedule so we can see which matches we're going to get to see, because we are going to see the guard play today, which is pretty exciting. But we're also starting off with a bit of an interesting matchup here, because it's two teams we technically know nothing about. G2 is a team that's a mixture of that old Sentinels roster and a little bit of version 1 in there as well.
Yeah.
And then on the FaZe side, I mean, technically it's the team, but we didn't know it was the team until today, so we honestly can't really base too much off of that. And again, we haven't seen any play, Tanner, so we don't really know what to anticipate. And then on the other side, we've got Guard versus DSG teams we know. But like looking at this first matchup, I'm really kind of at a loss as to what to expect from G2. FaZe, I feel like we at least can make assumptions based on what we saw last year.
Well, in the addition to FaZe, right, is Rossi. It's all over Twitter right now. Rossi's got the name changed, feeling pretty good. Contract signed, GIF, all that stuff has happened today. But the thing that worries me about that is we talked about it before the show started. Rossi is a great player. Was the best player in the open quals and the LCQ, right? And as far as player rating goes, Rossi stood head and shoulders above everybody else playing with the nation. But just because Rossi's a good player, it doesn't mean that that is just going to work, right? It doesn't mean that he's just going to be a cog that fits perfectly into this FaZe machine that we know can be a little crazy, a little wild, right? Baby Bay likes, maybe we see kind of that callback to the Smeeg strategy. So I really like the pickup in Rossi. I'm glad Rossi found a home, but I do think there are still question marks about that one. And on the other side for G2, it's like a couple of duelist players, a couple of initiator players, and then like Shazam's in there. And you're just like, what's going on? Where is everybody playing for this team? So both teams they're going to show a lot in this first map.
Yeah, I mean, Dryad, looking at this first matchup, looking at FaZe specifically, Tanner's talking about Rossi, and we wanted to take a look at his stats as well coming in. You know, I'm really just scratching my head as why it took a little bit of time for them to go ahead and announce this roster. But does Rossi make enough of a difference to take FaZe away from being a bit of a meme squad in their play style to being a serious contender or a threat?
To me, this is what is going to make that FaZe team that we want to see, right? And we've always wanted to see. For Rossi, the #1 ranked player in the LCQ playing for the nation, absolutely unstoppable and such a good initiator. He had #1 rankings for not only just the initiator role, but overall for the entire tournament of that last chance qualifier. And to me, that just speaks volumes of what this initiator player, this KO player can do to support someone so aggressive that likes to go in like Baby Bay on the duelist role. As long as you get that support and also a top class fragger from Rossi, then you have a FaZe that is kind of a dream come true. And this is kind of what we always wanted to see. And there's some good signs that we've had from this FaZe before, but even then, can they keep it consistent?
Can I add a caveat to that, though? Although I went back and forth as to whether or not I was going to add that caveat. This is Rossi playing at his best on flashes. And what we saw in the announcement today is that there's quite possibly he's playing that hard initiate or hard info role in the Sova, or maybe even possibly in the Fade or the Sky. So I'm wondering if Rossi is going to be the kind of factor that allows FaZe to go in, or if he's just going to be that guy that sits back, tosses out the recon bolt, and then Poise is sitting there with Baby Bay. And allowing them to play their Smeeg style. So there's a lot of moving pieces in just slotting Rossi into this one player role that they needed for FaZe.
Yeah, but when we look at the results from last year for FaZe, ultimately the story for FaZe is just a little bit too short at times, sometimes inconsistent. It was really stage 2 that they came alive. They had that close series against Xset where they ended up dropping. That was incredibly unfortunate given what was on the line. But that was really like There was a couple of last-minute pushes from FaZe. You look at the LCQ and you look at VCT Stage 2. Tanner, I look at FaZe and I think they kind of stole Xset's spot away as the perennial almost made it. Like the also rans. They tried to qualify, but they just came up a little bit short.
Yeah, and that it's strange because I feel like it put a lot of pressure on FaZe when you look at the history of them, where at one point they were at the top. And obviously FaZe Clan just in itself has so many fans that you know, with so many fans comes a whole lot of haters. So to continually just fall short from finding the highest amount of successes, you know, I guess a taste that FaZe has had before, it really stings. So now that you're in this, your FaZe Clan, and you're in this Challengers League, I think there's a lot of pressure for this team to perform. And again, they have to show it today, but we also have 5 weeks of this. So it could be a slow burn for FaZe to kind of get back to where we've seen them previously. I'm hoping it's anything but that.
You talk about pressure to perform, though. Let's take a look at their opposition. This is a team that, in my opinion, has some of the highest amount of pressure because of what is coming into this game with them. You know, Drive, when we look at the history of the players on this team, some of them spent a long time with other orgs, and now they're on this G2 roster, who's kind of taking a chance with the Challengers roster, and it's kind of interesting, I guess we'll say. You've got players who have been around the scene for a decent bit of time, but never together, with the exception of the 2 and 2 chunks. You got Dapper, Shazam, and then you've got Whippy and Penny.
And you said that perfectly, right? There is so much pressure for this team to perform to the highest level and right from the beginning against this matchup against FaZe. So Dapper and Shazam coming from Sentinels, and then pretty much a strong core for version 1 because their coach also comes from version 1. Then Dahame Oxy from Dark Ratio is a really good combination of players, though I want to see how it plays out because it doesn't feel like that style will necessarily match up against FaZe. When you're thinking FaZe and now you're thinking the addition of Rossi, you're thinking a lot of aggression coming through, and I want to see how G2 is able to respond and make that game their own, having Chesam, of course, as the IGL.
And to that point, though, I do want to just, I'm trying to play devil's advocate for both of these teams because it's really awkward with bringing Rossi into FaZe and this G2 roster where you have Penny and Oxy, who are pretty prolific duelists. Oxy maybe a little bit more unknown, but Penny at one point was kind of regarded as the best jet in North America, or one of the best jets in North America. Then you have Dapper and Whippy, who are like Sentinel players. And then you have Shazam, who's played a little bit of everything. I would imagine he's probably playing hard info, but I'm really struggling to see kind of where these players are getting seated and where the roles are being filled. I know Dapper can be incredibly flexible, so I would imagine maybe him on smokes, but I'm still having a hard time kind of wrapping my head around picking up 5 players that you didn't necessarily say like, okay, we need an initiator player, let's grab an initiator, right? You grabbed Penny, you grabbed Oxy, now you have 2 jet players and somebody has to make a change.
And that's why I don't see a clear vision, which is why I'm so excited for this matchup specifically, because for FaZe, it feels a lot more clear, right? They like that aggressive style. They have those initiators to support it. Though for G2, I do see Whippy picking up that smokes, that controller role a little bit more. Maybe Dapper as well, but I would see Whippy being that main controller, though we gotta see if it's true or not.
Again, so many question marks around this G2 team, but we'll take a look and see where this series is going to go. Maybe that'll help us form a better opinion as we take a look at the map selection for the series between G2 and FaZe. FaZe has tendencies based on what we've seen before, and so far it seems like they're sticking to them. Bind was definitely one of their permabans looking at last year, and they've always had an affinity for Icebox. They didn't necessarily always pick it, but it seems like they played it a lot. They kept it close in almost every match, but they usually didn't win. So certainly interesting to see them pick Icebox. And then from the G2 side, again, big old question mark. It's a coin toss, Dryad, as we take a look at the map picks and bans. It's tough to say if this is going to be standard or if this is counter. We really have no idea.
And what I'm really excited to see is Fracture, that first map, because we're not going to have that chamber meta that these 2 teams used to play, right? All these players used to play a lot more from last year. We're potentially going to be seeing that Killjoy, maybe that Cypher that some teams like to play. And the Killjoy, the way that you really get to control one of those sides, playing that 4-1 that we saw in last chance qualifier, we saw in the open qualifier as well, is going to be key for me to see Dicey, for example. Such a aggressive player. We always saw him in chamber, now potentially playing that Killjoy. How is he going to play out?
And then looking at that final map as well, we get the Haven pick in there. That does seem to be something that's a little bit more comfortable for FaZe. We do lose Ascent and Pearl. I'm not surprised. I don't really feel like FaZe was ever the type to be aggressive with some of the newer maps in the rotation, so it's no surprise to see them shying away from Pearl and sticking to more standard maps here, Tanner. But looking at the map pool, it's tough to say what's going to happen because, again, we don't know. So many question marks with G2, and honestly, a lot with FaZe, because we talked about FaZe last year and even the year prior. You would have moments of greatness where like FaZe was the most dominant team in North America. And a lot of that rode the wave of meta as the meta kind of shifted towards the way they play, which is hyper aggressive, in your face, the Smeeg gameplay, and then they had the sophisticated Smeeg, which was basically the same thing, if we're being honest. As the game started to shift in that direction, it obviously favored them. I don't know if they're going to change that coming into the year because they've obviously had time to workshop. We don't know how long they've been working with this roster, but the assumption is quite a while. Yeah, sure, they announced the roster today, Tanner, but how long have they been practicing with this core?
Yeah, true. The four, I think the core four, right? Because Rossi just finished. Rossi is just had to go through LCQ, unfortunately fall short. Could have been double dipping, absolutely. Maybe somebody in chat can let us know if they had him on the friends list and you saw him in scrims with somebody and how long they have been trialing. Feel free to DM us, Rossi, for this FaZe team. I think the scariest thing about this series is we have so many question marks. We have no idea what's going to happen. But for FaZe specifically, if you're relying on BabyBay to be your sole duelist, we know that BabyBay likes to play Jet. He's not as proficient on the Raze, and we're going to Fracture first, which is a map where I guess you could play the Jet, sure. I think we see a lot more Jet because you don't have Chamber Op anymore, so you want to have some type of Op power. But I would think that the Raze comes out on this map for FaZe, and on the other side for G2, you have two duelists, Penny, Oxy. Who feels better on the Raze here? Okay, cool. You play the Raze, you're feeling something else. Penny, you're on the Cypher for this one, wherever it may be. I think this is a really good pick for G2 to take us into the first map to really get some control. And then I also was looking at some stats here, whereas FaZe in LCQ didn't have a great Icebox, like you said, Bach. They pretty historically, they've had, deeper runs in Icebox, but unfortunately can't pull that map out. And for version 1, now that we have the coach of version 1, Icebox was a map that Emmy really enjoyed. So I think map number 2, I think this map pool, bodes really well for G2, the team that has maybe a little bit more to prove because this roster was just kind of slapped together. G2 comes across the pond to put this one together for us. But I think Fraction Icebox looked great to get us started.
I feel like the name of the game is going to be structure. And obviously we know what to anticipate from FaZe based on previous examples. If they found the structure, I think they'll give G2 a little bit of a more of a run for their money. But I also think that G2 has at times, when you look at the pieces, not necessarily as a group, because again, we've never seen them play, the pieces have played somewhat sloppy play. If we look at like last stage or the final stages in VCT last year, Sentinels did not look like a great team. If we're being blunt, like they looked pretty terrible at times. And it was disappointing because the team obviously went from being one of the best to potentially one of the worst competing at that level. And obviously version 1 had its run at one point in time and kind of fell out of relevance as we came into the year. And on the flip side, you have a FaZe team who is hot and cold. Like either they're really good or they're the bottom of the barrel. And the question is, which team are you going to get in any given day? And how is it going to translate with the way the game currently plays? It's tough to say. I feel like I'm leaning in G2's direction because FaZe just has always been that team that just gets close but doesn't quite. I think that this could be a 3-mapper, if we're being honest here, Dryad. I think we could go to that third map because of the fact that I think FaZe can take Icebox and they can take us to map 3. I think that G2 will probably take their map pick, and then Haven becomes the question mark. I do think that Haven plays pretty well for FaZe, but enough of all that. We do have our agent select ready, which means it's time for me to go and bid you farewell. My elevator has arrived. I will say farewell as you guys jump into the map 1.
Thank you so much, Bach, for that. Yeah, this is it. We finally get to see it. The question marks are going to be erased here. This is the map where we could see the Killjoy, but we do see a lot of Cypher, and I just put it out on the timeline. I want Cypher up, so hopefully somebody can give that to me.
Tanner,
Give me Cypher up.
I already said this in LCQ, but I just love the Killjoy now. And it's crazy because Killjoy was one of my least favorite characters, and now I just absolutely love to see how teams like to play around it. Though we're gonna be seeing that Cypher matchup, Dapper on the Cypher, Dicey on the Cypher as well. Two players that we know for that flexibility, but also that aggression from Dicey, right? And this is something that we talked about.
Yeah, I'm not perplexed, but I completely wrote off the Neon. I was not expecting to see, as I said, Raze or maybe a Jet. And yeah, I feel like Neon has been a pick in the recent months while we've kind of been in this downtime and tournaments have been popping up here and there. We haven't seen a whole lot of Neon. So this is a lot of fun. I'm wondering how much teams are scrimming it, how much teams are getting time to actually play against it, because I couldn't tell you the last time I saw Neon playing on any of the maps where Fracture Neon was starting to become kind of a staple, or at the very least a pocket pick that works. We were also seeing it a lot on Haven, but we've gotten away from that one as we've, got back into this Jet meta because you want to have that Jet op. So this is going to be interesting. Baby Bay could have a bit more control on the server than I initially gave credit.
And last time that we saw a Neon being played to this level, especially this year, was actually T1 in the Ludwig Tarek Invitational, where Saya player was playing that Neon. Though it was a very close matchup, and it was actually the first matchup that we saw for that tournament. And he had some really good moments, right? But you don't have that ability that we always think of when you're thinking of those players. Getting the operator, playing aggressive, holding those angles more than anybody else. You don't, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to try to run away. But for FaZe Clan specifically, this just matches perfectly that aggressive style that we were talking about. And we know that's not going to change. So they're just proving to us that even this composition is going to continue to push a narrative for them.
Yep, and we get to see it all right here to get us started on the year. It's the first map of the Knights Arena Valorant Challengers League. It's FaZe, it's G2, and it's FaZe starting on the attack. We didn't mention, but G2 has defense starting every single map here in the series. So 3 defensive first halves. Should we make it all 3 maps? And well, we're stacked up as 5, and Dicey gonna try and lurk away from the squad and maybe play on the top side. Oh no, actually, we're going quick here. How much util is set up for this? Nothing to stop the push onto site. Baby Bay's made it, and the rest of the team in tow here with Supa and Razi.
Immediately the camera goes down, and the only one inside that Cypher has to play back, has to play for that retake. Is a 5v5 though, as a Spike is able to get planted. FaZe just immediately taking control.
And Smoke's down to try and deny for now. Maybe they out towards Arcade, a couple of kills back and forth thus far, but a good flash will stall this retake for just a moment as Rossi playing the flashes here on this one as the last one standing was poised, and unfortunately FaZe just couldn't hang on to the site. Then G2 off to a great start.
A quick 1-2 for that retake, especially when you're able to play with that Cypher. Again, just playing back and having those different styles that we get to see very, very early on from G2, right? Some of those Sentinel players that like to play around tower, they like playing inside of tower, trying to fight for that control. It doesn't happen, but look at the weapons that we're looking at.
No, not this again. Not this again. Please, not this again.
FaZe are not going to stop. They're just going to run it down again.
That extra plant money, even if they don't get the plant money, I think you're still expecting FaZe to have stingers. This is the return of a meta that I think a lot of us did not miss. As the flashes are out, the first stinger that went in the hands of Oxy will collect that first frag in the paint shells. We'll keep FaZe at bay for now and slow things down. I don't know how much more smeeking you can do without Baby Bay.
You lose all that speed as well. There's a Neon that could help you out. With a fast lane, not really a chance anymore, so you have a 4v5. And again, I mean, those weapons are just going to make everything more difficult. You want to play them a little bit more up close. But G2 having control of the entirety of this map. Now the Cypher playing in tower, like I was mentioning before.
And 2 smokes available, so enough to get onto this B side, or at the very least, cut off any avenues here with the... Gonna toss up first Incendiary. Cages go up, and Dicey gonna be able to walk on here for free. Nope, not for free. Gonna get tagged by the trap wire. 3 players just behind him as well, and it's a discombobulated push onto the site, but they've got it for now. As an aftershock looks to stop the plant. Supa will get that one down safely. But G2 again in the driver's seat here in the retake. No, Rossi gonna turn the odds for just a second. We go back and forth, and Supa finds one with the Incendiary. The long-range stinger from Penny. Can't quite collect the second. And somehow FaZe have managed to reel this one back into a 2v2. A player in Arcade, a player in Tower. Shazam gonna go push aggressively, but that Bulldog, it's all bark, no bite, and FaZe have done it. They win the Force.
There was this really cool stat that I saw on Twitter, right, with the chances that you have of winning the entire match after you win that round with the Stingers, and it goes up to more than 60%. It's insane, the capability of this gun and that confidence in the Force, right, which is something that teams were usually hesitant about, but we're seeing it more and more. I believe we saw the Nation actually doing it a bunch in the last chance qualifier. Now we get to see it giving results for FaZe Clan, and now they have an orbital strike because of that.
Yeah, orbital strike, I feel like one of the most potent ults to have on this map, just in general. It feels so good in taking either site. Obviously, the post plant, incredible with that one. So Supa can have some big shoes to fill. Maybe not in this round. I say not in this round, but with Penny and Oxy having Stingers, I don't know. You can't count anybody out. Unfortunately, you can't count anybody out.
Absolutely. The one thing that you mentioned, right, about having that orbital strike is that for this matchup specifically, you're not seeing a killjoy, right? So you don't necessarily have to save that for that lockdown, but more for that specific post-plant scenario that FaZe want to put themselves in. And it's going to be potentially around this B-side once again.
Yeah, that's a great point. You get to hold on to that ult. You don't have to go ult for ult here, and this is the site hit now happening. Baby Bay to find the first. It's a complete crunch here on the B side. And, well, there's an orbital strike. Unfortunately, a bit of friendly fire. Baby Bay has to get out of dodge as the classics and Stingers go good for a couple. But, okay, never mind. Penny, Stinger in his hand, finds a couple of kills. Flashes out. Spike is down. Now spotted Superman once more. It's a Stinger. It's a Bulldog. It's the 3-round burst from both sides. But Penny on the lesser end of the duel for now. Or is he going to try and take it? Unfortunately, on the swing, Supa just a bit better. The weaponry a bit better. And the round will go the way of FaZe.
And these rounds so far are so close between the two teams. Once that Spike attempts to be planted, once FaZe thinks they have that map control, that B control, it's just that immediate reaction from G2. Is that immediate reaction that we expect, right, from an IGL like Shazam, proving from the beginning of this matchup what this team can do now under that leadership. And looking at G2, finally having those rifles. FaZe also having those rifles to work with, looking so much better that you gotta benefit G2 for this one. One orb as well for Penny to get that null command.
He's not alone. Oxy gonna try and help him out. See if they can get this orb online. Penny will get spotted. Oxy, however, did not, and that Trailblazer was just enough to back them away from that prized possession. As they'll look to head elsewhere. FaZe once more set their eyes on this B side, and hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Baby Bay gonna lead the charge here. Smokes are down, concussions are out, and the site is, well, conceded.
I mean, the Neon as well, when you have that fast lane, it just makes that B entry so much quicker. We saw it from Optic a bunch of times last year, and we get to see it for FaZe once again, though. It's slowed down.
That hurts. Just getting spammed through the smoke. Rossi falls. That's one set of flashes down. Baby Bay down a tough spot. He's, well, actually in the worst spot on the map here. So much utility to be dumped out that way as the Neon continues to try and jiggle and bail himself out. Dapper will net his third on the round and poise once more, just like in the pistol, the last one standing. This one, however, a whole lot less doable. An Investor Flawless comes through, and G2 have tied us up.
Benefiting the side just a little bit more. The patience too, playing so well for G2 to capitalize from it. Again, they only needed one orb, one kill to get Penny that null command. And it just shuts down the push that FaZe wanted to bring. It was Baby Bay all alone. They ended up playing a high-low, but it just makes things even for now. I want to see the variation, right, for FaZe when they start to change things up. This is a main thing for them last year. When they're playing their game, they look great, they look aggressive, they look comfortable. But when the enemy team starts to get a read, it gets so much more difficult. And this is not what you want to happen from them so early on.
Yeah, another reset, slowing that momentum that you talked about. But again, Stingers Stingers are the reason the game is 2-2 right now, and we're almost the reason FaZe were able to claw themselves, or G2, excuse me, were able to claw themselves back in. Penny in that 1v1 with Supa, unfortunately, just shy of winning that. As once more, we are back towards the B side. 3 players strong out towards A for G2, not giving up anything. And I think a pick that we didn't really mention, or at the very least I didn't, is Poised on the Sky, right? We saw very early the flash through the door with that guiding light, and that sound cue, you don't know what else is behind it, right? There's not a whole lot of utility that opens that up and also can flash the players on the other side like that guiding light can. So we'll see if an A play comes back to fruition as Baby Bay gonna walk right on into that one. He basically just sacrifices himself to try and sell the fake, but Penny hasn't moved. Neither is Oxy. They're ready for this.
And it's a difficult one here with the players across the map. 2 already go down for FaZe, and it was an eco. They didn't have too much. With Poison, Rossi, the last one remaining. And yeah, that's one thing that I noticed as well, right? For Poise, being on the Sky, just trying to give a little bit more support for Baby Bay as he goes in. It seems like it is working out for a good amount of entries, but it gets so much more difficult when you know it's gonna be that Cypher, Dapper on the other side. And even for this round, right? The side of G2, they knew it was an eco from the other side. They put 3 of their players just so aware
10 seconds left.
of any possibility, even of Baby Bay going for that ultimate and still trying to go for that aggressive style.
And the corpse spam there from Dapper, just trying to get that hat off and get the information for the rest of the team. As now we're essentially equal across the board. A couple of ults available for both of these teams. Dapper not actually getting that neural theft off, means he'll still have it in this round. And Oxy, we'll see how aggressive the Rays wants to go now that the showstopper is available, maybe for retakes. 5 players stacked up once more, and FaZe haven't really flirted with the idea of playing the entirety of this map. They're happy to play all together, and well, it's quick again once more. Unfortunately, those ultimates aren't going to clear out the site as nobody was home, and G2 now have a few to their name to try and retake.
And G2 just playing so far back because they know there's going to be the Rolling Thunder available. You don't want to be caught in that. So they're going to play back. Once again, that retake workout before they can do it again, but the Showstopper 2 gets 1.
Yep, that all does get 1, but it's a 1-for-1 as Orbital Strike once more going to come through and slow down the retake here. A player still on site, however, and I don't know if Baby Bay's been noted just yet. Whippy crosses, Baby Bay now position known. But Whippy completely surrounded inside main. He's got a player standing basically on his head. And, well, that player on his head will sit him down. Whippy falls. Baby Bay collects another, and FaZe will tie us up at 3 once more.
Quick reposition from FaZe. Everybody going back to main and being able to trade that pick from that Showstopper. That would have been a difference maker so early on if the rest of the team was not all around ready to trade up and make sure they have the numbers towards the end. A good round though. It was the first time that we see that A site being hit by FaZe. And you gotta wonder how many times it's gonna happen, right? It felt like that one conditioning was having that Rolling Thunder to play more aggressive, but now you don't have that anymore.
Was that the second Orbital Strike from Supa that we've seen?
Yeah.
Well, alright. 6 rounds in, 2 Orbital Strikes. Okay,
You know how it
Supa.
is.
Yeah, Supa's eating good in terms of the boba that floats around the map and the tapioca balls there. This is something that I wanted to mention too, right? We saw Baby Bay early run into the trap wires. Because you don't have the Rays, you don't have the Boombot to get rid of some of that type of utility, but the Trailblazer does that same job. So finds the first one, has not found the second one. However, Dapper in a lot of trouble, tosses down the cage, pulls out the shorty, but stunned up, couldn't get a whole lot done. Meanwhile, Dicey falls on the opposite side of the map. It's a 1-for-1 trade out towards A, and a player dead for G2 out towards B, which put FaZe in a pretty good spot. And look at that plant, just a bit safer than the Aftershock would allow. Rolling Thunder on the opposite side, though. Shazam wants to go quick. 2 players inside the tower, and the cross, it's just narrowly missed. And Oxy gonna try and run him down, but stunned up. Rossi says no. The cross from Arcade eventually is good, and Poised plays the birds for 2 of his own, and FaZe will reclaim a lead.
And it seems like, I mean, you see the Rolling Thunder coming up. It gets 2 of the players that are positioned in tower, but still, the reaction takes a little too long for everybody on this retake to get there in time and be able to get the trade, especially because there's 2 for FaZe together. So FaZe, they make it to 4 here, just from that. And the ultimates that become so crucial, right? For FaZe, it was perfect when we got to see it with a quick entry. But G2 may be struggling a little bit more.
Oh,
Jump.
I don't know if he spotted something that made him give up on that, or if he just whipped the jump. However, or either way, it's still tough for Oxy.
Okay,
That's tough as well.
Wow.
Dapper kind of getting his just desserts as we get another orbital strike. This one coming from Whippy, but it wasn't enough to stop the plant. So Spike's still down, FaZe still a player ahead, although the health isn't great on a few of them. And Baby Bay being one of them, he's still fragging out. 6 HP in a dream is the last one standing is Whippy. As the Incendiary has 2 smokes to play with, but a 1v4, the economy, it's not great. I would imagine wants to try and look to save, but Baby Bay on the hunt here. The rest of FaZe just behind him. A fault line at his feet. And Whippy, oh, unfortunately, there's just too much. FaZe doing everything they could, not only to win that round, but to reset that G2 economy.
I mean, you get sprayed through the smoke with the Vandal.
Yeah.
It's a 5v4 at that point. Your Cypher goes down. And I think for G2, and this is something that we talked about early on, right? We don't see a lot of Neon anymore, especially in Fracture. It's just once in a while that we get to see it. It seems like G2 are just getting used to that playstyle once again. Because it's only 2-3 seconds that make the difference for when that orbital strike comes in to deny that plant. And it's happened in a couple scenarios, even for those retakes, even when we saw the Rolling Thunder, right? Getting used to, you know, you gotta be expecting FaZe to be right on that site pretty much immediately. So G2 is gonna take a timeout from that.
And try and figure out how to slow this down. Poise really starting to have standout rounds, right? As one of the last few alive, or even closing out these rounds. He was the player out towards main, trying to keep his teammates alive who were stunned up in tower. Rossi,
Yeah.
the newest addition to the squad. Not necessarily top on the charts just yet, but we know that we have incredibly high hopes
Absolutely.
for this initiator. 'Cause, yeah, going back to that Neon pick, at the very least, when you hear the site hit happening from a raise, you know what's happening, right? Blast pack, the raise is behind those, or, well, in front of those blast packs. There's a lot of opportunity for Baby Bay just to toss out the fast lane and not actually go. Or choose when in the few seconds you do have for those blue walls to be up, choose when to go Sonic Speed and actually hit that site. So there's a lot of options for FaZe and delaying hits or faking hits, and it definitely helps that, again, Poised is doing their job. Have Seekers online again. So a second Seekers available here in 8 rounds for Poised. As this time, after the timeout, expecting something, our FaZe from G2, right? Imagine they have something cooked up. It's very similar to what we've seen previous.
Stingers. It's the Stingers.
Yeah, it's Stingers, and it's Seekers, and it's an A hit here for FaZe. We know these ones like to go quick. A couple players spotted, but no shots taken.
Again, it doesn't find anybody. G2 playing so far back, and FaZe is actually expecting that it only gets traded at the end. But again, Spike planted post-plant scenario, and a retake that has been so impossible for G2 so far.
Yeah, Oxy retrieves a weapon, but just can't do anything with it, unfortunately. Baby Bay on the off angle. Dapper does collect one, but he's the only player on the site. Incendiary queued up here. Super taken down low. One in response, however. And that's going to make things a little bit harder to stand inside A main as they'll wrap all the way around. The back is spotted. The head is shot. And now Dapper has to go clutch here. A Stinger. 86 HP, Baby Bay in poise, and he wasn't ready for the player behind the box. So a 6th picked up for FaZe, but the lead has doubled for this team.
I think you mentioned it perfectly as well when it comes to what FaZe is expecting after that timeout, right? They're expecting something different. They're expecting something potentially more aggressive, because for G2 it has been all so laid back, trying to play that retake and sometimes not being able to catch up to the speed for FaZe. But FaZe actually take that dish, playing a 4-1 for the first time, and they make it work out. They're gonna go for something similar again, at least very early on.
Well, and looking at the start of these last 2 rounds, okay, hold on, I'm gonna hold this stock because Baby Bay just wants to run him down, fault line out to try and slow things down. Concuss in way of the relay bolt was just behind it, but when you look at the start of the last 2 rounds, nothing's changed for G2. So that timeout, it tells me, hey, we're giving up these sites. What are we doing these retakes, right? Because you have aggression out towards A to try and get those orbs. Now you have those same 3 players, right? Both your initiators and the Raze and Oxy playing just outside the door. And Dapper and Whippy, 1 generator, 1 canteen. This has kind of been the default defensive setup. But G2 need to try and find ways to deal with FaZe once they've got themselves situated on the site. As Poise cues up a guiding light. Oh, not like this.
Surely. Gonna be a 45. There he goes.
Yeah, but great timing though, right? They hit that rolling thunder, sure, but a beautifully timed fault line coming from Shazam slows down that push immensely. At the end of the day, it is still a 1-for-1. The zappy fingers are on here. We'll see if Baby Bay can find something as he storms his way onto the site. Meanwhile, Dicey across the map, and the spike is headed this way.
Dicey trying to find something here. Only depends a camera already spotted. The one player, as everybody else for FaZe, is able to make that rotation. The early aggression, though, in this 45 seconds was so good.
10 seconds left.
For G2 to be able to react in time, and Shazam gets 1 4v3. That's even once again.
Even once more, Dicey tosses out the hat. We'll get 2 pings of information. So for now, G2 have to stay put. Don't want to reveal where they're headed just yet. Fault line's out. Still a trapwire on the site, but it shouldn't get any value. Soup on the backstab just makes it so easy. The cross set up perfectly. And then swinging into 2 was dapper. G2, sure, they took the time out. Nothing changed at the start of the round. Nothing changes at the end of the round as FaZe win another.
And you'd think that one thing that slows FaZe down is that knife. The Penny throws very early on, but that hasn't really affected them too much at all, right? Maybe for that hit that we saw in this round, and I think it's only been this round where that hit came a little bit later and forced that rotation from FaZe. But all the other time is G2 trying to take control early on, trying to force that utility. It doesn't work out until it turns out into another force. The Stingers.
There are no save rounds anymore. There's
It's a half buy, you know? I'll give them that.
yeah.
But it didn't work out for them before.
No, FaZe is the only team that's actually really found success with that. Baby Bay narrowly scoots onto the site, takes heaps of damage, but still a lot of spam, right? That's what these Stingers allow for, is just stray headshots, chip damage as you're crossing onto the site. It hasn't stopped FaZe from getting on and getting a spike planted, but it's going to cost a reinvestment in armor next round, I guess. Number 3, by the way. No hard feelings.
By the way. Just giving count here. I mean, there's nothing you can do at this point, right? G2 just playing so far back. They had Stingers. They didn't have the best buy for this round, but also it just seems like they need one of those players to be in a more forward position, and that's why I expected Dapper to be that player, right? We saw it one time towards tower, but the rest of the times has been playing by the spawn, just like everybody else, maybe a little bit more reactive towards a push from Sands. And still that retake that doesn't work out. FaZe are so good at taking space, and they could make it to 9 here. 3 ultimates though. G2. A null command, and again, they're relying too much on this KO to stop the push, to stop the aggression. Can they do it? It's this time in their round that might matter the most for them this first half.
And a reminder that this is where G2 wanted to go to get us started here. Fracture was their pick. Oxy trying to slow things down. Rocket goes out. Unfortunately, not enough base. And everybody from FaZe stays alive. Just a bit of chip damage. Paint shells just behind it, but a lot of stall potential taken off the board at 25, 30 seconds into this round, Dryad.
I see is the only one here towards Dish. Everybody else towards the southern part of this map, and changing a little bit, actually expecting something new from G2 in this last round before the second half. That Spike though is on the floor. They're playing and trying to bait all the ultimates that we saw early on, right? For G2, they had 3. Now there's only 1 remaining.
A great start to the round.
Yeah, I mean, and you have an unusual theft. How much can you do with it after FaZe is able to position themselves so well, playing forward, pretty much denying the Cypher to get any value over and over again?
30 seconds left.
And that stings.
Yeah.
That could be the nail in the coffin on the round here. Penny falls. Now the site hit out towards B, and I mean, just a spanner in the works. So much thrown into this round, making it crazy here for Whippy and Oxy. Well, now just Oxy to try and find the win. Spike still needs to be planted, however. 10 seconds left on the clock. I'm not too sure if Oxy knows this. Says he picks up a couple of kills for himself. Doesn't matter. Baby Bay in the back lines, 9-3 at the half, and
Switching
G2
sides.
have to have something cooked up crazy here on the attack triad.
Absolutely, and that's crazy. That's the only slow, like, default round, slow round that we saw from FaZe this entire first half. I mean, they never really needed it. They knew it was a round that was important to them. They knew G2 finally had advantage when it came to those ultimates, and they shot it down perfectly. There's so much strategy that comes through for FaZe to be able to find success in those 9 rounds. And it gets even more terrifying if you're able to get that pistol and those double digits.
Tech pause is somebody who's probably slammed their keyboard after that round. After that
me.
tap, or
It was me, actually.
yeah, that's again really tough. A good start to that round for FaZe, although a lot of damage dealt. So when you look at that overall picture again of the 5v5 after the dust settles, the action inside A main.
Yeah.
I mean, no more paint shells, no more showstopper, no command was used. Boombot was gone. They got rid of so much util, and then had a minute and 15 seconds left to still play out that round. And again, paranoia is starting to set in. Dicey finding that early kill. Baby Bay was also on that late flank that eventually won the round and taking down Oxy. It's a FaZe clan doing
There's
a really
so
good
much.
job. Yeah.
And the high peaks that we saw from FaZe last year, it was when they were able to play their own game, able to play this aggressive game that sometimes has a mix of a little bit of something else with that utility that they're able to incorporate, especially here when we talk about the sky and when we talk about the neon. But it looks so clean and G2 hasn't been able to react.
No, and well, the quick play
Spike down
doesn't
A.
stop there. They
That
wanted to go
works.
aggressive out towards Dish, and well, aggressive they go. Rossi here to pick up the
standing.
pieces, but
Spike down
Whippy
A.
immediately steals that
Good
kill
one.
back. So uneven odds here as Dicey gonna try his hand. Will find the first. 70 HP is not a whole lot here in a 1v2. Flashes out, and Whippy happy to collect the third on the round. We're back on track for orbital strikes, and G2 back on track to being back in this game.
I got scared for a second, but everything is under control for G2. That pistol round and that aggression, again, changing things up, and I love to see those creative ideas coming through for them. And to be able to capitalize from them towards Dish as well was something that we don't see very often when it comes to this round in specific. But, I mean, G2, they're going to keep playing in this way. FaZe actually going for a save. And I like this, right? When we see like 9-3, a lot of teams like to actually force into those stingers. They're going to play calm. They know the advantage is still pretty big for them.
Yeah, a bit of kind of false confidence when you're up that high to force the rounds down.
Absolutely,
and then
yeah.
eventually you're finding yourselves in pretty awkward positions. Doxley quickly going to take control of tower. Boombot goes out. He's going to follow right behind it. Meanwhile, everybody from FaZe working their way through the spawn. Baby Bay still trying to figure out which way he wants to go, so he's going to be headed to the top side of the map and flank through Arcade, while the rest of the team, it's Generator, it's Canteen. It's 4 players here for now, and Shazam. I mean, really, Shazam just around the corner from getting backstabbed. This tripwire, though, should give it away.
There.
It just has to wait for the right timing for there's a FaZe to try to hit this side, though. A good amount of players already low. There's not much that you can do. Give this round to G2.
Die, essentially, is what you have to do. Good damage onto one. That's just a stinger of Penny. Baby Bay gonna go for that one, though. Try to take a fight with Shazam. It will eventually fall. Dicey gets one for his trouble. Poise also in that same boat as the rest of the team will go down. Decent damage dealt by FaZe, considering that they basically full saved into that round, but it went the way of G2, and now this lead is only 4.
They were playing far back, but we're already seeing something different, right? Even from Baby Bay, you mentioned it, that flank that came through. We didn't see that kind of push too many times from G2 when they were on the defensive side. So you get to see that the slight variation that might make a difference when now you have the rifles for FaZe. And you're actually changing that setup, right? So for G2 with the Cypher, they were always playing towards B and so far back. And now Dicey's able to put himself towards this A site, where you know G2 is going to try to contest early on.
I love the adaptation, right? Hey, if we don't have a raise that can get up there, let me see if I can hop up with the Neon. He's not going to go for a second chance. It's Oxy going for his first on the site. We'll find that kill onto Dicey. Rossi's able to get one back, but G2 right here in the face and fighting forward as they end themselves a player ahead in a Spike Planet.
And it all happened so quickly, right? There was that position, that information immediately gets denied. Dicey, the first one down. Now you have 3 players from the side of G2 position. Or at least a little bit of crossfire coming through. Superman, instant a chance here is a good idea here. With the wall as well coming through.
A really good idea. Cut off the vision for the players inside main. Tap onto the spike though. Fragment will delay. Flash up and over the top. Nobody really home to fight as Penny falls. Now somebody's got to get on that spike. Looking away from the flashes, Baby Bay. And a transitory win streak for G2 finally comes to a close. As FaZe find double digits.
Baby Bay so good with a fast lane. Isolating those duels, making it so much better for the 2v2, and then making it even with the last kills that he was able to get. Double digits now for FaZe.
My thanks.
As they seem to be the team that has adapted the best so far. And a G2 that played that fast style, that aggressive style towards its A. They got that spike planted. They had the right idea, what we are often seeing of that crossfire from main. But again, you have to take the Neon into account, and sometimes it is so difficult knowing that not many teams like to bring this.
You have one more kind of added ingredient to the game when you have to worry about the fast lane that no longer damages you, but it does cut off sight lines. The relay bolt that bounces twice, and then obviously Baby Bay. You know, everybody's afraid of the pumped up kicks from Baby Bay as he's sliding in to try and take fights. Now with that round loss for G2, however, 2 rifles, 3 stingers, still a little bit one.
Powerless.
And it's good for now. Everybody here for the defense, just about 4 players on this side of the map. And look at the kill feed. Whippy goes huge. Resurrection available for the robot. Shazam gonna hop onto it for just a second. Has to hop off, but it'll eventually fall. And Dapper can't quite reel in the spray from this stinger, so he swaps weapons. A Vandal now in hand with 7 rounds left in the magazine, and he is all on his lonesome. Seekers are out. Trailblazer as well, so some extra information as Dapper gets the reload. Dicey plays the high ground and closes us out for 11 for FaZe.
I mean, and I said it right. It was such a good read from FaZe. You know there's going to be a no command available from the side of G2, and then you have 4 players just outside of A side ready to go for that sense hit, and it works perfectly for them. There's a good amount of trades, but they end up over and over again coming up on top, right? So many of these rounds, if not every single round, we've seen only 2 players alive towards the end, but it's FaZe the one who's closing it out, and that is what matters the most. They can get to 12 here on Fracture. Because again, as the Stinger's coming through, and that's scary.
Quick aggression, and you mentioned this earlier, is probably gets away from G2 as
so
Baby Bay from downtown is finding these kills. You mentioned this earlier in this, the changes that FaZe have made. Baby Bay just trolling. He's been tagged by the cam. He's not taking it out. Just they're corralled, caged here even. As Dicey tries to jump up, fails the first. The backstab, swift. The round even swifter. But the control on the map, right? We didn't see a whole lot of this from G2. The most that we saw was Oxy packing onto that box outside B main, even in their retakes, right? Every time G2 was on a retake towards any of these sites, they were just working through spawns. So, just doing a good job, and I think that is one of the keys to victory on Fracture is playing the entirety of the map.
Especially the north part of the map, right? And Baby Bay has done it constantly when he was flanking, when he was playing for that retake. Now having this ultimate is just those little surprises that add into the pressure that G2 has to try to come back. And now it just looks so difficult for them, crucial round for them to get a streak going. Potentially having Oxy getting that showstopper, but it hasn't gotten too much results for them so far.
And from round 1 to now round 18, the aggression doesn't end. Confirmation on some information as Oxy still plays out towards the spawn. The Trailblazer confirms that. The fault line, however, Didn't quite land on the stun. So Oxy survives, as do the players of FaZe, as we go back to the drawing board. And G2 are getting their feet wet, walking through the sewers here.
In the meantime, Dapper has been trying to get that information, has been trying to play for this camera, but it gets shot down every time. It's the other side for Dicey actually holding and pushing now with the rest of the team.
Smokes are down, good 0 point. That's going to turn off Dicey's ability, so no trap wires to worry about. And the site's been taken. Okay, half the battle here for G2 as they get the spike planted, but now the Chase, we'll see how potent, and they're ready for the players now, playing around the map. Oh, it's Oxy, the first to fall. I thought he'd get the jump on Baby Bay. Unfortunately, not the case. And now, how much is there to worry about, right? Who's coming from spawn? Who's coming from these other angles? Dicey is the player from spawn. Headshot there. Information and confirmation once more. Flash up. And this should be the round. We'll see if G2 is Dapper going to get spammed again. Aftershock behind. Out comes the orbital strike to try and delay. And unfortunately, doesn't think that's going to be enough. Spike's halfway. And we have gone the distance here on Fracture. 13-5 is where we finish FaZe with an incredible start to your drive.
And it's only one map so far, but for all the FaZe fans, right, this is the one map that you wanted to see them doing good in, especially with that neon, with the new additions. There were a lot of questions, and it's crazy, right, to think about that Rossi was not, you know, at the top like we expected, but it was enough to allow Baby Bay to go in to get that support even from that sky. And this is the way that FaZe has always worked out. This is how they play their own game. And G2, they took one timeout, and we never really saw a big change from that, right?
Yeah, you're right. The change in the timeout, you know, the start of the rounds were the same in the way that they were setting up. Maybe comms, maybe nerfs a little bit different after that timeout. But even in the post plant, right? FaZe were still finding ways to win out the post plants. We take a peek.
Yeah.
The eBay map replays here to close us out. The orbital strike just wasn't enough, unfortunately, to win that one. And Fracture, I said this looks great for G2, and I have been made a fool because it looked great for FaZe. And now that we kind of set our eyes on Icebox, I don't know what to expect. Fortunately, we don't have to be mind raiders here, Dryad. We can wait for the players to get locked in, and we can see how that one shapes up, because Icebox is map number 2, Haven on the docket as well, should we need it. But before we get there, you heard how we feel about our groups, both A and B. Let's go and take a look how the players feel about their respective groups.
Honestly, I don't even know who's in our group for real. I just kind of just show up to the game. I know who our first opponent is. I know we play G2, which is cool. You know, shout out Dapper. You know, those are and Penny. Those are the dogs right there. I was about to curse, but those are the dogs right there. So those guys are mad cool. But I don't know who the rest of the people in our group. I just know we don't have TSM, and I really want to play TSM because, you know, it's just that little revenge series. You know, so I want to play them. But that's about it. I think, yeah.
All I know is group. I feel like the groups are really fair, in all reality. But I feel like Group A is like a really good group for us. We get to play against another free agent roster breakthrough, which is really good to show like who's the best available free agent roster right now. I'm excited to play against Oxygen and mostly Oxygen. I get to play my friends Scuba and Pony, and I'm excited to play them. I don't think I've ever played them in a match. Group B though, that group's like low-key the group of death. I'm not gonna lie. M80 guard, like I don't know, you're playing for third and fourth in that group. I'm gonna be 100% honest. That group is absurd.
Something that our group has is some really good sleeper qualified teams like Breakthrough and Oxygen. I think those two teams are really good, and those are two games where we definitely just cannot be sleeping on. And I don't think you can sleep on anyone in this event, actually. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, team whatever beats team whatever, you know, like anyone could beat anyone in this. In like the last VCT year, there's like a clear skill gap with like the X sets and the optics. There's like a clear gap. I really don't think there's going to be as clear as a gap in this event. and maybe I'm wrong, but I do think that the groups are honestly pretty even, and I think it's going to be very close.
I think the hot take for a lot of people is that we're gonna be the top of our group, so I'm gonna go with that. I think that would be my hot take. And I don't want to call anyone out for me thinking that they might be underwhelming or anything like that, because realistically I have no clue. And if I say something right now and it goes the opposite, I won't look good, so I'll play it safe.
I think that our group is definitely harder. I mean, I think most people agree with that. Like, our group is definitely the group of death, like, in a sense. But I don't mean that in like a way like, oh, I'm scared. Like, it's a scary group. Like, me personally, I'm not scared. But you can't tell that group B is harder. The teams overall, I really am only like the only team that I feel like should be like a problem for us, or like that might be kind of hard, is guard. Maybe SR. I feel like the other teams, like, they're good. Don't get me wrong, I'm not calling them bad, but I feel like even when our team's having an off day, I feel like we're still gonna be better tactically and stuff than the other teams. But then that's where I mean, like, teams like guard and SR, like, they have pretty good players, like almost similar to ours, even though like I said, I'm pretty sure like our team has the best players in each role. So we just got to make sure that we're hitting those days against like guard and SR, and I feel like if we're playing like our game and we're actually like somewhat on point, like, we're just gonna win. But I feel like the hardest team for sure will probably be guard. Like, they look good. They beat some of the franchise teams in the Summit event, the Turk event, and like we faced them in the past. I mean, a match is different than scrims, but when we did face them in match last year, it didn't feel as hard as it did in scrims, so I'm sure it'll be somewhat similar.
I definitely see M80 and the guard as like top two, in my opinion. I think everyone, I mean, maybe Shopify, right? They're also probably up there top three. So, but everyone else, I couldn't tell you. I haven't even seen G2 play, right? Like, no one's seen G2 play yet, besides like scrims. But at scrims, TSM last played, but that's like a Ludwig tournament. But like, all these teams are like new. I don't really have predictions outside of that, but a pretty good feeling. Shopify, guard, and M80 are like the only teams I can confidently say are probably going to be on top of this group. Obviously, like, I'm not gonna sit here and say we're gonna lose to them, but like, outside of that, just my honest opinions. I think everyone else is like, I couldn't tell you.
My takes for split one, I would say that like the underdog, or like the dark horse of the tournament, would be Breakthrough. I think those players are actually really good. Their macro is pretty good whenever we scrim them, so I would say Breakthrough is definitely a team you want to look out for. That's like from Open Qualifier. I don't think there's any like overhyped teams. I think all like the invited teams and orgs are pretty solid. Like G2, FaZe, all those guys are good. I think that's going to be super competitive. I don't think, people are talking about like us or M80 are like favorites, but I don't think you can call anyone a favorite in this league, because a lot of these new rosters are like looking really scary, and they're having great scrim results. So it's kind of just like we're gonna have to see what happens, what shakes up, and I'm hoping it's very competitive. That makes it more fun, of course.
I mean, I think we're gonna top split one. I think M80 will be our other competition. But the thing is about like this league is that like all the teams are decent, and it's Valorant. So anyone. I think at the end of the day, anyone can win. But there are clear underdogs and favorites for sure. I think FaZe might impress people now. I think Rossi was a really good pickup for them. I think people have been sleeping on FaZe lately, but I'm really excited to see them like with the Rossi edition. But overall, like, I think the groups are what everyone expects them to be. Like, I think it's just what everyone expects going to happen is going to happen.